You know, bear with me, you've heard me speak in a number of different settings about what it means to be Edmonton's downtown university, but I think that some of these things bear repeating, because 7 months in, or maybe I'm 8 now, I'm not sure. You know, I think it's worth repeating them again and again, because I think it becomes part of our DNA the more we say it. The first is that we sit in a unique place in the city. We're not in a park on the other side of the river, away from the hustle and bustle of downtown. We sit right at the crossroads of the city between 104 and 105. And if you look that way south, you see one Edmonton, a really prosperous Edmonton. An Edmonton with, well, I can't see them from here, but usually from my office I can see up to 3 or 4 cranes at any time building the new Edmonton. We were in the Globe and Mail this weekend as one of the 6 projects that is reshaping Edmonton, right? So we're about building. But I drive in on 105, and I'm sure many of you do too, and I drive right past the bottle depot. And then I see a different group of Edmonton crossing 104 and walking to 105. And I think that reality is important too. They're going to the bottle depot, as many of you know, right? These are amongst the most vulnerable people in Edmonton, and how do we include these vulnerable people in our community? How do we make sure that the university is welcoming to everyone? Yesterday I was at an Indigenous Advisory Council. How do we change how we do things here to ensure that we include and make it easy for Indigenous people to practice ceremony here? How do we make sure that our LGBTQ two-spirited students, faculty, and staff feel safe to be who they are here? How do we make sure that women and people of color, people with disabilities, are all equally represented in all of our units to make sure that they have the opportunities that all of us have? These are going to be the grand challenges of all institutions in the 21st century. I think we can more than do this. We're already doing it. But I think we can do more, and we will do more. Where do we stand? And these are conversations I want you to have today and think about. Where do we stand on social justice? What do we stand for with respect to that? I believe that education is fundamentally transformational, right? There is no reason to believe, given my early childhood history, that I should be a university president, except that my parents and my grandparents insisted on education. And then they didn't stand in my way when I said, you know, I think I want to get more education. I think that I'm going to get more than a BSc. I think I might get a master's degree. And after the master's degree, I said, you know, this is kind of fun. I might go and do more. And they were like, oh dear, what kind of job are you ever going to get? But they didn't discourage me. They didn't say I couldn't go, right? And I come from a fairly traditional family where if my parents had said no way, no how, I probably would have not gone, right? But they said, okay, but don't complain, and please don't come live in my basement when you can't get a job, right? I'm like, oh, I swear I'll get a job, I promise, right? And sure enough, I did, and it turned out okay. But it was that ability to foster a love of education that fundamentally transformed my life, and will fundamentally transform my family's life in the end. So where do we stand on social justice? What is your commitment to inclusion? Because as somebody told me a few weeks ago, diversity is a fact, inclusion is a choice. Where do we stand on inclusion? How do we change our practices to ensure that we aren't subject to implicit biases about our beliefs that actually hamper us from fostering inclusion? You know, and this is consistent with this piece, how do we fit into our communities? How do we go out and represent MacEwan outside of this physical structure? When you're out in the community, how do people see MacEwan? Are we serving our communities?